My greedy sister married my husband, certain she'd inherit his $400 million fortune, days later. I never thought my own sister would betray me. Growing up, Claire and I couldn't have been more different. I believed in working for what I wanted. Claire believed the world owed her everything. If I got a new bicycle, she demanded a better one. If I scored an A in school, she cried until our parents praised her for something else. For years, I told myself it was just sibling rivalry. I was wrong. Claire didn't just want what I had. She wanted to take it away from me. And eventually, she did. At least, she thought she did. I met Ethan when I was 28. He wasn't flashy. He didn't drive sports cars. He didn't wear expensive watches. In fact, most people assumed he was just another successful businessman living a comfortable life in Chicago. Including me. For 3 years, we built a life together. We laughed together. Traveled together. Dreamed together. He was kind, patient, and unlike anyone I'd ever known. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. For a while, everything felt perfect. Then Claire started showing unusual interest in my relationship. At family dinners, she'd constantly ask questions. How much does Ethan make? What does his company actually do? How many properties does he own? I found it strange. Ethan found it amusing. Your sister sounds like an accountant, he'd joke. I laughed too. I wish I hadn't. 6 months before our wedding, everything changed. One evening Ethan came home looking exhausted. He sat at the kitchen table and rubbed his temples. There's something I need to tell you. My stomach tightened. What is it? He looked nervous. Genuinely nervous. I haven't been completely honest about my finances. I stared at him. For a second, I thought he was about to tell me he was drowning in debt. Instead, he quietly slid a folder across the table. I opened it. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. Investment reports. Property portfolios. Corporate ownership records. Numbers everywhere. Huge numbers. At the bottom of one page was an estimated net worth. $417 million. I looked up. Then back down. Then up again. What am I looking at? Ethan sighed. My family's wealth. I blinked. Your family's what? Wealth. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Turns out Ethan's grandfather had built one of the largest logistics companies in North America. Over decades, the family fortune had grown into hundreds of millions. Most of it was hidden behind trusts, investments, and private companies. Ethan never talked about it because he hated attracting people who cared more about money than relationships. I wanted someone to love me for me. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I would have married you if you were broke. His shoulders relaxed. I know. And I meant it. I truly did. Unfortunately, someone else didn't. A week later, Claire somehow found out. To this day, I don't know how. Maybe she overheard something. Maybe she snooped. Maybe one of our relatives talked. Whatever happened, she learned the truth. And from that moment on, she became obsessed. She started calling Ethan constantly. Sending him messages. Inviting him to events without telling me. At first, I assumed she was trying to be friendly. Then I saw the texts. One evening Ethan handed me his phone. Read these. I opened the conversation. My face went cold. Claire. If things ever get complicated with my sister, you deserve someone who understands you better. Another message. You're wasting your best years. Another. I would have treated you differently. I felt sick. Ethan looked disgusted. I didn't respond. I know. But that wasn't the point. My own sister was actively trying to steal my fiancé. When I confronted Claire, she didn't even deny it. Instead, she smiled. Actually smiled. You act like you own him. He's my fiancé. So. I stared at her. So. Maybe he'd be happier with me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For the first time in my life, I cut contact with her. No calls. No visits. Nothing. And for a while, life became peaceful again. 3 months before the wedding, disaster struck. Ethan and I got into a huge argument. A misunderstanding involving one of his business partners spiraled out of control. Neither of us handled it well. We said things we shouldn't have. Things we regretted. Eventually, we separated. It was supposed to be temporary. Just space. Nothing more. At least that's what I thought. While I was trying to save my relationship, Claire was making her move. The next time I saw her was at a family barbecue. And she arrived holding Ethan's hand. I nearly dropped my drink. The entire backyard fell silent. My mother looked horrified. My father couldn't speak. Even my cousins looked uncomfortable. Claire, however, looked thrilled. Like she'd just won a trophy. Ethan and I are together now. The words hit me like a punch. I looked at Ethan. He couldn't even meet my eyes. That's when I knew. It wasn't a rebound. It wasn't temporary. They'd been seeing each other behind my back. 4 weeks. Maybe longer. I left before anyone could see me cry. 3 months later, I received a wedding invitation. Claire and Ethan were getting married. The ceremony would be held at a luxury resort in California. The invitation arrived with a handwritten note. No hard feelings. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. I read it 3 times. Then threw it into the trash. The wedding became the talk of the family. Claire acted like royalty. She bragged non-stop. About the mansions. The private jets. The fortune she'd soon inherit. She openly talked about becoming one of the richest women in America. Some relatives were disgusted. Others shamelessly sucked up to her. Money changes people. Even people who don't have it. Then came the day that changed everything. Just 4 days after the wedding. 4 days after Claire became Mrs. Ethan Carter. 4 days after she started planning how to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. A black SUV pulled into my driveway. 2 men stepped out. Both wearing expensive suits. One introduced himself as an attorney. The other was a financial trustee. And the moment they spoke, I realized something unbelievable had happened. Something that would destroy Claire's dreams forever. Something Ethan had never told her. Something worth far more than $400 million. And when my sister discovered the truth, she would wish she'd never married him at all. The secret hidden behind the $400 million fortune. The 2 men standing on my porch didn't look like ordinary lawyers. Everything about them screamed money. Tailored suits. Perfectly polished shoes. The older man extended his hand. Ms. Emma Carter. I nodded cautiously. Formerly engaged to Ethan Carter. My heart skipped a beat. Yes. He exchanged a glance with the younger man. We'd like to discuss a matter concerning the Carter family trust. I froze. The Carter family trust? Why would they be talking to me? I invited them inside. 5 minutes later, we were sitting in my living room. The older attorney placed a thick folder on the coffee table. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Did Ethan ever tell you about the inheritance conditions? I frowned. No. The attorney sighed. I suspected as much. Apparently, Ethan's grandfather hadn't simply left money behind. He had left rules. Very strict rules. Years before his death, he created a trust designed to protect the family fortune from opportunists. According to the documents, no spouse could automatically inherit any part of the Carter fortune. Not $1. Instead, family members had to meet certain conditions. Long-term marriage. Community service requirements. Independent financial stability. Character evaluations. Even psychological reviews. The grandfather had spent decades watching people chase his money. He wasn't about to let strangers walk away with it. I listened in stunned silence. Then came the bombshell. If Ethan passes away, the attorney explained, his spouse receives a fixed settlement of $5 million. I blinked. $5 million? Correct. My jaw dropped. Claire thought she was getting $400 million. Instead, she'd receive less than 2% of that amount. The rest would remain in the family trust. Protected. Untouchable. The younger trustee opened another document. There is another issue. I suddenly didn't like where this was going. What issue? He slid a paper toward me. It was Ethan's updated beneficiary file. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then my eyes found my name. Emma Carter. Primary beneficiary. 70%. I stared at it. Certain I had read it wrong. What? The attorney nodded. Ethan updated these records before the wedding. I looked at them in disbelief. Why would he do that? The older man leaned forward. Because he never changed them. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He intended to. The room fell silent. But he never completed the process. Suddenly 100 questions exploded inside my head. Had Ethan forgotten? Had he changed his mind? Did Claire know any of this? The answer became obvious immediately. No. She had absolutely no idea. If she knew she wasn't inheriting hundreds of millions, she never would have married him. That evening my phone exploded with notifications. Family group chats. Text messages. Voicemails. Everyone was talking about the same thing. Claire. Apparently, she had already started spending money she didn't actually have. She purchased a new Bentley. Placed a deposit on a beachfront mansion. Ordered custom renovations for a luxury penthouse. And worst of all, she was bragging non-stop. According to my cousin Rachel, Claire spent an entire dinner explaining how she'd soon become the wealthiest person in the family. The irony would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. I received a call from Rachel. Emma, turn on the news. What happened? Just do it. I grabbed the remote. Every major local station was covering the same story. A Carter logistics executive had been arrested. The company was under investigation. Stock prices were falling. Investors were panicking. I immediately thought of Ethan. My heart sank. Regardless of what happened between us, I never wanted him hurt. Then Rachel said something unexpected. Claire is losing her mind. What? She's freaking out because she thinks the fortune is disappearing. I couldn't believe it. The company was facing a serious crisis. And Claire's first concern was the money. That night, videos began appearing online. Someone had secretly recorded Claire at a charity event. The footage spread rapidly. In the clip, she laughed while discussing her future inheritance. One sentence stood out. I didn't marry Ethan because he's handsome. Then she laughed. The people around her laughed too. Until she finished. I married him because rich husbands are easier to find than $400 million. The room instantly went silent. Even through the video, you could feel the awkwardness. Someone uploaded the clip. Within hours, millions had seen it. And the internet was ruthless. The backlash was immediate. Sponsors canceled partnerships. Social invitations disappeared. Friends stopped answering calls. Former supporters suddenly developed amnesia. People who had praised Claire a week earlier now pretended they barely knew her. Money attracts people. The possibility of losing money scares them away even faster. Then Ethan called me. The first time we'd spoken in months. I stared at the screen for nearly 30 seconds before answering. Hello. There was silence. Then his voice. Soft. Exhausted. Emma. Hearing him again hurt more than I expected. You okay? He laughed bitterly. Not even close. For a moment neither of us spoke. Finally he said something I never anticipated. I made a mistake. My heart stopped. Ethan. I should never have married her. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Painful. Honest. Before I could respond, another voice suddenly exploded through the phone. Claire. Screaming. Actually screaming. You lied to me. Then crashing sounds. Something shattered. More yelling followed. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. Completely speechless. Because for the first time, Claire had finally learned the truth. She wasn't inheriting $400 million. And she was absolutely furious. What she did next would shock the entire family. And expose secrets far darker than greed. The truth Claire couldn't accept. The morning after Ethan's call, I woke up to 27 missed calls. 23 of them were from Claire. The remaining 4 were from my mother. That alone told me something was very wrong. Claire, and after stealing my fiancé and marrying him, I doubted she suddenly wanted to apologize. I ignored the calls. An hour later, my mother showed up at my apartment. The moment I opened the door, I knew this wasn't a normal family visit. She looked exhausted. Emma, can we talk? I stepped aside and let her in. As soon as she sat down, she blurted out the news. Claire found out about the trust. I almost laughed. No kidding. Emma, it's bad. The way she said it made me uneasy. How bad? My mother rubbed her forehead. She completely lost control. Apparently, after learning that she wasn't inheriting Ethan's fortune, Claire had spent the entire night screaming. She accused Ethan of deceiving her. She accused his lawyers of fraud. She even accused the Carter family of hiding money. At one point she demanded access to confidential trust records. The attorneys immediately refused. That only made her angrier. By midnight she had thrown a vase through a glass wall inside their mansion. At 2 a.m., security was called after she started threatening household staff. At 4 a.m., she attempted to fire employees who didn't even work for her. And by sunrise, she had become the laughingstock of everyone connected to the Carter family. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. This wasn't surprising. It was simply Claire becoming exactly who she had always been. The only difference was that now everyone could see it. Later that afternoon, Rachel called. "Have you checked social media?" "No." "Do it." I opened my phone. Instantly I understood. The secret recording from the charity event wasn't the only video. More clips had surfaced. Old clips. Embarrassing clips. Videos showing Claire bragging about marrying money. Making fun of working-class people. Calling herself future billionaire royalty. The internet was tearing her apart. Thousands of comments. Millions of views. And every hour brought new footage. Someone, somewhere, had been collecting evidence for a long time. Then another scandal exploded. This one was worse. Much worse. A former friend of Claire's came forward publicly. She shared screenshots of private messages. Dozens of them. The messages revealed something horrifying. Claire had started pursuing Ethan long before our breakup. Months before. Maybe even a year before. While Ethan and I were still planning our wedding, Claire had been secretly flirting with him. Sending late-night messages. Inviting him out. Trying to drive a wedge between us. Reading the screenshots felt like being punched repeatedly. Part of me wanted to stop. Part of me needed to know. By the time I finished, one thing was clear. My relationship hadn't fallen apart naturally. Claire had helped destroy it. That evening, Ethan appeared at my door. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Unshaven face. Wrinkled clothes. This wasn't the confident man I'd once planned to marry. This was someone carrying enormous regret. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then he quietly said. I crossed my arms. You owe me a lot more than that. He nodded. I know. We talked for nearly 3 hours. For the first time, Ethan told me everything. The truth wasn't flattering. Claire had targeted him aggressively after our separation. At first he'd ignored her. Then came the loneliness. The anger. The confusion surrounding our breakup. Claire knew exactly when he was vulnerable. And she took advantage of it. By the time he realized what was happening, he'd convinced himself moving on was the right thing to do. The biggest mistake of his life. His words, not mine. Do you love her? I finally asked. The silence that followed answered the question before he spoke. No. I looked away. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt sad. Because nobody wins in situations like this. Not really. Then Ethan revealed something unexpected. There's something else you should know. My stomach tightened. What now? He handed me a folder. Inside were financial records. Bank statements. Transfer receipts. Credit reports. I frowned. What am I looking at? Claire's spending. I stared at him. What about it? His expression darkened. She's broke. I blinked. What? Completely broke. Apparently, Claire had spent years pretending to be successful. Luxury handbags bought on credit. Designer clothes financed through loans. Vacations paid for with borrowed money. Expensive apartments she couldn't afford. The glamorous lifestyle was fake. Every bit of it. Underneath the designer outfits was a mountain of debt. Over $1.8 million worth. My jaw nearly hit the floor. You're serious? Ethan nodded. Very. Suddenly everything made sense. The obsession with wealth. The desperation. The relentless pursuit of money. Claire wasn't just greedy. She was drowning. Then came the final bombshell. The one neither of us saw coming. 3 days later, federal investigators arrived at Ethan's home. Not because of Ethan. Not because of the trust. Not because of Carter Logistics. Because of Claire. Someone had reported suspicious financial activity connected to several accounts she'd controlled. Large transactions. Questionable loans. Missing funds. The investigation had officially begun. And if the allegations were true, Claire's problems were about to become much bigger than losing access to a fortune. For the first time in her life, she couldn't manipulate her way out. She couldn't cry her way out. She couldn't flirt her way out. Because this time, the people asking questions carried badges. And what they discovered next would shock the entire family. The investigation that changed everything. When the investigators started digging into Claire's finances, nobody expected what they would find. Not Ethan. Not my parents. At first, everyone assumed it was just debt. A few bad investments. Some reckless spending. Maybe a few unpaid loans. But within days, it became clear that the situation was far worse. Much worse. The first major discovery came from Claire's former business account. According to investigators, several large transfers had been made over the previous 2 years. Money moved through multiple accounts. Different banks. Different states. Different names. The pattern immediately raised red flags. One investigator later described it as a financial maze. The more they looked, the more suspicious everything became. And Claire was at the center of it all. Meanwhile, the Carter family was panicking. News of the investigation had spread quickly among their business circles. Ethan's grandfather had spent decades building a respected reputation. The family wanted absolutely no connection to a public scandal. The board of directors demanded answers. Investors demanded reassurance. Lawyers worked around the clock. Everyone was nervous. Especially Ethan. One evening he called me. His voice sounded exhausted. They found another account. I sat up immediately. What kind of account? There were $6 million moving through it. I nearly dropped my phone. 6 million. Yeah. The silence that followed felt endless. Neither of us could understand where that kind of money had come from. Claire certainly hadn't earned it. Not legally. Not through any job she ever held. Which meant investigators were asking a terrifying question. Where did the money actually come from? A week later, the answer began to emerge. And it shocked everyone. Including Claire herself. Or at least she pretended to be shocked. Years earlier, Claire had become involved with a wealthy investment consultant named Victor Hayes. To most people, Victor appeared successful. Expensive suits. Luxury cars. Private clubs. the perfect image of a financial expert. Behind closed doors, however, he was running something very different. A sophisticated fraud scheme. For years, Victor convinced wealthy clients to invest money into fake projects. The returns looked impressive. The paperwork looked legitimate. Everything seemed real. Until investigators discovered it wasn't. Millions of dollars had vanished. When the news became public, social media exploded. The same people who once admired Claire now mocked her relentlessly. Headlines were everywhere. Millionaire bride linked to financial investigation. Marriage for money ends in disaster. The humiliation was impossible to hide. Everywhere she went, cameras followed. Questions followed. Judgment followed. Not because Claire had been exposed. Because they finally realized how many years they had spent enabling her behavior. One evening my father called me. "I think we failed her." His voice cracked. For the first time, I heard genuine regret. All those years of excuses. All those years of favoritism. All those years of looking the other way. Now the consequences were impossible to ignore. Then something unexpected happened. Something nobody saw coming. Ethan filed for divorce. Immediately. No delays. No negotiations. No second chances. The moment his lawyers confirmed the risks surrounding Claire, he ended the marriage. The marriage Claire thought would make her rich had collapsed almost overnight. And because of the trust agreements she had ignored before the wedding. According to Rachel, Claire screamed so loudly that neighbors called security. She tore up documents. Threw furniture. Destroyed expensive decorations. Anything she could reach. But none of it changed reality. The marriage was over. The fortune was gone. And the investigation was still ongoing. Then came the biggest shock of all. Investigators discovered that someone had been secretly recording Claire's conversations for months. Not journalists. Not family members. Someone much closer. Someone she trusted completely. The recordings contained dozens of conversations. Conversations about money. Manipulation. Relationships. And even admissions that suggested she had intentionally pursued Ethan because of his wealth. When word of those recordings reached Claire, she panicked. Because she knew exactly who had made them. And if those recordings became public, they wouldn't just destroy her reputation. They could destroy her freedom. The next person to step forward would reveal a betrayal even Claire never saw coming. And it would leave the entire family speechless.